Hello everyone, this is your friend Naruto Mexis 2.0 and we are back with a new fanfic story part 4. What if Naruto returned to Konoha stronger than anyone expected part 4. If you like this fanfic, don't forget to subscribe my channel. Now let's start the fanfics. Naruto shrugged, either Chunin or Junin, why? Jiraiya shook his head though, they were genin. Naruto's eyes widened in shock, wah. How do you know? And if they were pretty strong. Quote. Jiraiya nodded. Yes, well, the ones in the Chunin exam were strong too. I could tell they were genin from the techniques they used. They were all based on sound or some sort of sonic energy. All sound genin learn basic sound techniques. Once they become Chunin, they begin to focus on other jutsus. Junin are in a league of their own. They're just as strong as our elite Junin in Konoha. Orochimaru will find this place someday. Naruto, I'm pretty sure of it, and when he does it won't be with genin, and maybe not even Chunin, but finitely Junin, and you better hope none of them are elite sound Junin. Naruto shook his head. The sound village was getting stronger and stronger with each ping year, and why do I want to hope that none of the Junin Orochimaru will send are elite, other than the fact that they're super strong. And tough. Jiraiya raised his eyebrows in mild surprise. You don't remember? You've already fought a few elite sound nins already. Naruto raised his eyebrows. Kimimaro. He was an elite. I couldn't even touch him, and even Gaara had a hard time beating him. I found out the only reason he won was because Kimimaro was sick or something and died in the middle of the fight. Jiraiya nodded. You're forgetting the others, the rest of the Sound 4, they were elites too. And I was surprised when I found out that a bunch of genin had defeated them. Your generation has got to be really talent. D or something. Jiraiya's face became solemn, and Sasuke too, he is an elite now as well. Naruto's expression dropped and he lowered his eyes. Even in the only controllable stage of Kyuubi and using his Rasengan, Naruto wasn't able to defeat Sasuke, he hadn't stood a chance. So the elites are the ones who survive Orochimaru's curse seal. Jiraiya nodded. I'm telling you this because eventually Orochimaru will find this place, and I want you to be prepared, to defend yourself and try to get back to the village alive. That's why the others are here, they are your bodyguards, they already know that they are expected to protect you with their lives and try their hardest to get you back to Konoha if worse comes to worst. You have a while though, I'm certain. So prepare yourself as much as you can, you'll be lucky if Orochimaru never finds you. Understand? Naruto nodded. The others, they're ready to sacrifice their lives for me, aren't they? Even Hinata-chan. Jiraiya nodded with a concerned look. Naruto looked up finally, and they don't even know why they're protecting me, do they? None of us know why Orochimaru wants me dead, and all we know is that the Akatsuki want the Kyuubi in me. And the others don't even know that, do they? They just know that they need to keep me alive and away from Itachi at all costs. Naruto paused, sighing. It just seems wrong for them to do this for me, and yet they're willing to do so, just because they were told to. Quote. Jiraiya reached up and put his hand on Naruto's shoulder. You're wrong, they're not protecting you with their lives because they were told to, but because they want to. They are risking their lives for you because they are your friends, Naruto. They are doing this because they care for you. Quote. Naruto shook his head, clearing the tears that were beginning to sting his eyes, but that's because they don't know about Kyuubi. If they did, if any of them did, even Hinata-chan, they wouldn't be doing this, they wouldn't even be here with me. They wouldn't trust me, they'd leave me and never talk to me again. I know because everyone else who knows, other than you, Iruka-sensei and Oba-chan, hates my guts. Who's to say they wouldn't act the same way? Quote. Jiraiya smiled. We accept you for who you are, Naruto. The others who don't like you, they don't know who you are, and they probably never will. But they, Jiraiya nodded his head at the others, they know who you are. I have a feeling that they'll react in a completely opposite way than what you said. But that's my opinion, I can't convince you to tell them, you have to do it yourself. Jiraiya took his hand away and headed to the door. Before he began down the stairs, Jiraiya looked over his shoulder. that pendant that Hinata gave you, it's her grandmother's, isn't it? Naruto nodded. Yeah, how did you know? Jiraiya smiled. Her grandmother was the one who I dated, you know, the one who taught me how to use Juyuken. Well, she would have given me that if I had done one thing. Naruto raised an eyebrow, which was? Jiraiya smiled and laughed. If I married her, of course. I packed my bags the next day and ran as fast as I could. I left her an apology note and stayed away from Konoha for a few years. Quote. Naruto rolled his eyes. Figures. Jiraiya grinned. You should ask Hinata why she really gave it to you. Later. And with that, Jiraiya closed the door behind him and descended the stairs to the outer door. Was it the left hand or the right hand? I hope I get it right this time. Naruto turned back to the room and walked over to his luggage. Geez, he must have took everything from my room. His 6-foot-tall speakers were even there. Hinata came over to him. Are you okay? I saw you and Jiraiya-sama talking. Naruto shrugged and grinned widely. Ah, Ero Sennin was just telling me not to trip and fall off a wall or something. He then put his arm around Hinata and pulled her close. Come on. We've got rooms to find. All the others came over hearing Naruto and agreed. Neji spoke up. We should explore the entire village and become acquainted with it. We'll be staying here for a while after all. We should learn all the ins and outs of this place. Quote. Naruto nodded in agreement. Hell yeah. Come on guys, let's check this place out. Together they all went out one of the doors. Outside there was a balcony that circled the entire building. What they saw was astonishing. There were other buildings, much like the one they started out in, octagonal shaped with steeped roof and a branch sticking through it. Some were lower, others higher, some were multi-leveled, and there were a couple that were situated around the trunks of the trees, making them huge, bigger than the building they were at. Some trees had multiple buildings in their branches, with ladders and arched bridges connecting them. Different trees were connected by rope bridges with wood planks to walk on. The bridges were large, some spanned over 100 feet long and 20 feet wide, some bridges were supported in the middle by an outflung branch. In the distance they could see other buildings in other trees. As they walked around the balcony, it began to spiral upward around the trunk of the huge tree. They passed more and more buildings, built higher and higher, until they finally broke the surface of the forest canopy. 800 feet in the air. There was a little watchtower at the top of the central tree. Inside there were no walls, only banisters and a large telescope that looked out the domed roof. It was a mini observatory. There were also mini telescopes attached to the banisters so one could look out over the forest, and even at some of the buildings through the leaves. Naruto remembered that this was invisible to anybody who wasn't actually in the village. Naruto suddenly noticed something. There were thick cables that ran from the edge of the dome roof out into leaves, and there were handles that hung from them. Naruto's heart began to pound with excitement. If those were what he thought they were, I've gotta try one. Naruto walked over to one and grabbed the handlebars. 2 sheets extended out from where it attached to the cable and gripped his hands so that he couldn't let go. Naruto shrugged. At least he wouldn't have to worry about falling. Sakura looked up from one of the telescopes. Naruto. What the hell are you doing? An edge of worry had crept into her voice, causing the others to look up at Naruto with confused looks. Naruto looked over his shoulder and grinned. See ya guys at the bottom. He then jumped forward and lifted his legs over the banister. Everyone yelled at once. Naruto. Naruto didn't hear them though. He began to descend rapidly towards the tops of the other trees. He was afraid he was going to hit a branch, when he went through a hole that was camouflaged to look solid. The cable then dipped at a near 90-degree angle and Naruto began to race so fast that the air was whipping his face. Whahoo. Quote. As he approached a branch he could see the cable was attached to the branch by a metal arch that caused the cable to twist around the branch. Oh shit. Naruto hit the turn at over 70 miles an hour, causing his body to shoot out at a 90-degree angle to the ground, and forcing him to experience some major G-forces. The zip line continued down, then up, with twist turns and dips around, over, below and even through branches and trunks of trees. It was a freaking roller coaster. Finally, the handles hit what seemed to be magnetic brakes, so that Naruto slowed down gently and finally stopped at a balcony of another building. When Naruto put his feet to the floor, the hand guards came undone and with a whirring sound the handles zoomed backwards back to their place of origin. Naruto looked around. What a rush. I wonder what the others are like. He was apparently in a landing platform. It was small with small hatch door in the floor that led to the building beneath it. Naruto looked out at the other buildings and spotted the central tree in the distance with its winding balcony that went to the top. He was pretty far from it. It's going to be a bitch finding my way back. Oh well, might as well see where I am. Naruto opened the hatch door and descended down a ladder into a room with a staircase that went downwards. At the bottom he found himself in what must have been the dojo. It was huge, the middle was completely dominated by the trunk of the tree it was situated around. The ceiling was about 50 feet high near the center and the walls extended even farther from the trunk. It was mostly open space, with connecting buildings that held weapons, training gear and even changing rooms and showers. Naruto figured about 100 shinobi could have trained in this building without fear of crowding. Naruto started to make his way back towards the central tree. It wasn't hard, all you had to do was find bridges that went in the general direction you wanted to go. He was at the central tree in about half an hour of walking. He went into the room and found Sakura, Tenten Hinata sitting on a couch. Hey guys, I'm back. Man, was that a ride. They all looked up in surprise, then Sakura stood up and stalked towards him with a glare painted across her face. Sakura-chan. Naruto suddenly wasn't sure if he should have just gone off on the zip line like that. Naruto suddenly found Sakura's fist connecting with his stomach, driving all the air out of his lungs. He heard a couple of his ribs snap. Holy shit, she can hit hard. But before he could even bend down and grab his stomach, her palm connected with the left side of his face, sending him crashing into a wall. She then stalked over to him again, her hands clenched at her sides and her eyes hidden in the shadow of her hair. He could hear Hinata-chan's voice, Sakura-chan. Please, don't. But Sakura ignored her. He got to his knees slowly. She had nearly broken his jaw, but she definitely severely bruised the entire side of his face. His left eye was having trouble focusing, and he could feel blood trickling from his ear. He couldn't hear out of it. His world was spinning. He couldn't defend himself. He didn't want to though. He figured this was how she would treat him if she knew the truth about him. He braced himself for another hit. But instead he felt soft hands caress the side of his face. He looked up to find Sakura's eyes filled with tears and she was smiling. He felt her healing chakra seep into the side of his face, mending the muscle and restoring his hearing and sight and even reaching down into his chest and mending his broken ribs. Naruto could only give a confused look. Sakura shook her head smiling. Please, don't ever do something like that again. We were so worried about you, especially Hinata. We didn't know if the zip line was still working, and so we didn't know what happened to you. We thought you fell when we lost sight of you. Neji and Lee are out looking for you. Naruto finally noticed that Hinata-chan's eyes were red and puffy and tears streaked her face. He suddenly felt guilty. He made them worry so much that they thought he was seriously hurt, or worse, dead. Hinata jumped up and ran to him, collapsing in his arms. I thought you were. She couldn't finish the sentence. She began to cry new tears and buried her face in his chest. Naruto wrapped his arms around her. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have worried you so much. Quote. Sakura stood up and looked down at him, wiping away her tears. You may think we're just here to protect you because we were ordered to, but we volunteered for this. You're our friend Naruto, and we agreed to this knowing full well that we were agreeing to sacrifice ourselves to keep you alive. Tenten got and stood by Sakura, nodding her head in agreement. So you can see why we were so worried about you. We care about you, and right now, you're the most important person in all our lives. Hinata sniffed and looked up into his face. We all love you, Naruto-kun, in our own way, even if we weren't on mission to protect your life with ours, we'd still do it anyways. You changed so many of us in such good ways. We don't want to lose you." Sakura and Tenten were suddenly joined by Neji and Lee. "She's right," Neji stated matter-of-factly. Lee nodded his head vigorously. "She is correct, comrade. You have made many changes in our lives ever since we bothered to get to know you." Sakura spoke up. "Ever since we bothered to acknowledge you." Naruto couldn't help himself. No one had ever said such things to him other than Hinata-chan, but this time was different. They weren't only saying that they wanted him around, they were saying they needed him. He began to cry, and for once he couldn't tell whether it was from sadness or joy. Hinata reached up and put her arms around his neck, embracing him and whispering, "I love you, Naruto-kun, and I expect you to keep your promise." Quote. Naruto nodded, unable to speak. His throat felt choked from the sobs he was holding back. They didn't know about Kyuubi, but even so they accepted him for who he was, cared and even loved him for who he was. Maybe Jiraiya-sensei was right for once. They needed him and, he realized, he needed them for more than one reason. They were his friends, the people he held precious and close to his heart. When he was younger he never thought he would have friends, but here he was, an unrealized dream come true. Naruto wiped away his tears and looked up. "Thank you, for everything you guys. I'd say you didn't have to do this for me, but you already let me know that you want to. And I'm guessing I can't stop you, huh?" They all shook their heads, smiles on all their faces. Naruto grinned. "Then just be warned, none of you are dying to save me, I promise you, so don't argue about it. None of you are going to die for me, I won't allow it." "Understood. I don't care what the mission says, if you're going to protect my life, then I'm doing the same, whether you like it or not." He stood up, pulling Hinata with him. Everyone else nodded their heads slowly. Naruto grinned. "Alright, let's check this place out then. We still gotta find our own rooms. And I want to see where those other zip lines go to." That one went to the dojo. Neji looked at Lee, then back at Naruto. "Lee-san and I will check the other zip lines to see where they led and whether they're safe. The rest of you find your rooms and don't worry about too much exploring, I found a map." Neji walked over to the branch sticking through the middle of the room and pushed a wooden knot as if it were a button. A section of the branch flipped around, revealing a large map that detailed each of the buildings, how big they were, where they were and even what their altitude was. Naruto could see red lines showing ladders and bridges and yellow lines curved around the buildings and trees, representing the zip lines. Neji pointed at a building that had a red arrow pointed at it that said, "You are here. I think we should find rooms that are in the central tree, that way we can use this area as the basic meeting place, and since the kitchen and storage buildings are here as well." Quote. Everyone voiced their agreement, and rushed over to the map to check where the different rooms were. Tenten and Sakura chose a room together, not asking Hinata if she wanted to sleep with them, figuring Hinata would want to be with Naruto. Lee and Neji chose their own rooms a little below the main building. Hinata clung to Naruto, and began to blush as Naruto-kun's finger stopped on a room that was apparently meant for two people. All the others had already found what rooms they wanted on the map and had grabbed their things and left. The main room. Hinata hadn't even thought about the fact that she might be sharing a room with Naruto. Naruto saw Hinata's blush. "Don't worry, there's 2 beds, so you know we don't have to." Naruto began to blush at the thought. He began to wonder if he could find a 2-person bed to put in room, then blushed even more as he realized what he was thinking. Is this room okay, Hinata-chan?" He was stuttering. He couldn't believe he was embering himself so much. Hinata nodded slowly. "Why yes, it's good." Naruto nodded as well, still a little pink. "Okay, let's get our stuff and head up there. I think we'll need a couple of trips though." Naruto was eyeing his sound system and TV warily. Hinata giggled and began to grab her things. It began to dawn on her that she was more alone with Naruto-kun than she ever had been before. There were only 6 of them in this entire area, days away from any real civilization other than farms. She was going to be alone with the man of her dreams, her boyfriend who she loved more than life it's LF for a year, probably more. And she was sharing a room with him. Woot. Next chapters are going to be fun. I can't wait until later in the story, it's going to be so cool. But I shall wait and not rush my work. My main concern is giving you, my audience, a good story, plus I want to give myself a good story to read as well. That's how you can usually tell if your work is any good or not. You enjoy reading it, looking at it or watching it yourself, depending on what it is. Anyway, enough of my art philosophy. Give me your reviews. They give me sustenance in life. Ha ha ha. So, what you're trying to tell me, is you don't know where they are. Am I right so far? There was a faint hissing in the voice that came from deep within the shadows, as if a snake were at MPTing to speak. Dusetto had no problem hearing the anger in his master's voice. My apologies Orochimaru-sama, but the frog Sanin, Jiraiya, he took them somewhere that we had no idea even existed. All we were able to gather was that it's called the tree house. Quote, the anger in the hissing voice only seemed to grow. You failed me again. First you proved yourself unable to kill a mere genin. Now you can't even find him. I told you the price of failing me a second time Dusetto. Dusetto could feel the sweat trickle its way down his spine, like an ice-cold river. His body began to shake uncontrollably. No. Please master. I will find him, I swear it. Just give me more time. Orochimaru stepped from the shadows, towering over the quivering form of Dusetto. His new body was truly terrifying to behold. He had decided that human bodies were too weak and so he had his trusted second-in-command summon him an Oni, a demon of the spirit world. When Orochimaru had been brought back by Kabuto, bloody and barely clinging to life from his battle with that despicable Itachi, he had the demon waiting for him in a specially prepared cage. The process was painful for both the demon and Orochimaru, because the Oni was in truth a being of spirit. And didn't have a true body. Orochimaru had to slowly and carefully fuse himself with the insane amount of demonic energy. The end result was what stood before Dusetto now. Orochimaru was now over 7 feet tall, but he still possessed the lithe and supple body that he always preferred. His eyes now glowed red with an infernal light, so that from a distance it looked as if his eyes were on fire. When he smiled, Dusetto could see the rows and rows of countless fangs that made up Orochimaru's mouth. His tongue was as long as ever but now forked like a real snake's. Long curved and twisting horns stuck up through his greasy black hair, and from his shoulders, elbows and knees, clusters of bony spikes tore through his robes. His nails had grown into black claws that were as hard as steel. Dusetto had seen him slice through a rock wall with those claws. And from Orochimaru's back sprouted a single leathery wing like a giant bat that extended out to his right side, and from the other side where one would think the other wing would be, grew a monstrous three-fingered arm that rippled with muscle and had claws as long as Wakazashi's. Dusetto had only seen Orochimaru with his robes off once. Underneath the clothing tentacles and spikes stuck out of his body at strange angles and he was marked, seemingly at random, with black and red stripes that made him look like he was on fire. Dusetto lowered his eyes from the monster that appeared before him. He could see through the clothing what appeared to be snakes writhing against Orochimaru's body. Please Orochimaru-sama, I beg of you, I just need more time. Quote, Orochimaru smiled, flashing the innumerable amount of needle-like fangs that filled his mouth. Your time is up, Dusetto. From behind the closed doorway all one could hear was the high-pitched screaming of a man under the most extreme amount of pain imaginable. Sasuke smiled devilishly. After Orochimaru was done with him, he would be able to have his fun as well. Hinata-chan, rise and shine. Naruto was squatting on her headboard, so that he was looking down at Hinata's head. Come on, wake up already. Hinata grumbled something incoherent, but then slowly opened her eyes to the loud voice that was Naruto. Her eyes snapped open when she saw Naruto squatting over her. Kya. Quote, Naruto yelled as well at Hinata's startled reaction, and then lost his balance falling forward onto Hinata. Umph. Naruto felt his head hit something hard and everything suddenly went black as he was knocked out. Hinata grunted when Naruto fell on her, and then felt a sharp pain as her knee collided with his skull. Then she froze, realizing what position they were in. Her head was between his legs so she had a perfect view of Naruto's rear and the lettering on the back of his boxer shorts, which read, Ki. T staring. And he was face down, his head between her. Kya. Hinata jerked, throwing Naruto off the side of her bed so that he landed with a soft grunt as he struck the wood floor, while she grabbed her bed sheets and drew them up to her chest, even though she was wearing a t-shirt. All the time she was blushing crazily and breathing hard, her heart beating uncontrollably. Naruto-kun had done some weird things to wake her up in the morning, but nothing like this had ever happened before. They had been there for exactly a week now, and she still wasn't used to it. Naruto had to wake her up every morning because she was sleeping in so late. He was beginning to worry about her because she had black bags under eyes every morning when she woke up. The reason for this was Hinata was having trouble sleeping. She'd lay in bed staring at the ceiling, unable to will herself asleep due to all the thoughts racing through her head. Most of them having to do with the beautiful male ninja that was sleeping soundly a mere 3 feet away from her. At first she couldn't understand it. They had slept together before, they had even slept in each other's arms. More than once. And this time they weren't even sharing the same bed. They had 3 feet of empty space separating their beds, and for some reason it was worse than when they were pressed bow daily together and sharing the same sleeping bag. After the third night of sleeplessness though, she had finally figured it out. They were alone. It wasn't like in the forest of death, when they were trying to stay alive, had a mission and hadn't even proclaimed their love for each other yet, and they were alone at his house. It was for training and to get away from her father. And when they were traveling to the tree house they were surrounded by other people. Now though, even though they were on mission, they were truly alone with no one else around. Everyone kept to their respective rooms at night, only getting up to go to the bathroom or to the kitchen for a midnight snack. During the day Neji, Lee and Naruto would go to the dojo for a couple of hours and train, so would Tenten and Sakura, and of course they dragged along Hinata, who instead ended up training with Naruto most of the time. After their general workout every morning everyone would go and explore. Hinata had mostly spent her time in the vast library that held thousands of books on shinobi arts and just other things in general. Sakura and Tenten would explore village, checking out every building they came across and spending a lot of their time either in the baths or the giant outdoor pool, which was suspended in the branches like a bird's nest with a 10-foot fence around it. Neji and Lee would usually stay in the dojo and train for the rest of the day. Naruto, on the other hand, before continuing his training, would go up to the central tower and ride all the zip lines to all the far corners of the village. He had brought Hinata up there once on their second day there and had convinced her to try one out. It was an utterly terrifying experience. Naruto could hear Hinata's shrieks all the way down. Afterwards Naruto had agreed that he wouldn't force her on any more zip lines. Of course, because of that particular zip line Hinata had discovered the location of the library. When the sky turned dark and stars came out though, everyone retreated to the common room where they would lounge about and talk about the day's events, joke around and play board games and cards. Eventually everyone would wander off to their rooms. Naruto and Hinata always seemed to be the last ones to leave. This was because Naruto only got up when Hinata did. The reason she didn't go to bed early was because of the evil smiles she received from Tenten and Sakura, and even Lee gave a thumbs up and winked at her and Naruto, as they left for bed. She feared what they would do if they saw her get up and leave for her room with Naruto. Just the thought was embering enough to make her blush. Hinata finally gained control of her breathing and her heartbeat, and slowly crawled out of bed and over to Naruto's still form. He was laying face up with a big red mark on his forehead. As she leaned over him he opened one eye and squinted up at her. "Did you have to throw me so hard?" His voice was weak from the lack of air in his lungs. First I knock myself out on your knee and then you scream and wake me up and I find myself flying through the air and then gracefully landing where I am now. Quote. Hinata blushed at why she had screamed and thrown him. I'm sorry Naruto-kun, you just surprised me, that's all. Naruto frowned up at her. Are you sure you're okay, Hinata-chan? You tell me you are, but you seem so tired every morning, and you're moving really slow during training. That's not like you. Naruto grinned, you're usually trying to beat the crap out of me. Hinata smiled back, no I'm not. I've just gotten a bit more competitive, thanks to you. Naruto laughed and sat up and putting his arm around her waist and pulling her against him so that their faces were only centimeters apart. Good. I like you better when you're not so shy. Hinata blushed, but didn't move her gaze from his eyes. Her heart always started beating hard in her chest when he did this, pulling her so close they might as well be kissing but weren't. I like myself better this way, too. Naruto was pulling her closer, slowly, until finally, their lips met. It never failed to amaze her every time that she would melt at just the touch of Naruto's lips against hers. It was like a drug, the taste of his lips, addictive, and the feeling giving her slight adrenaline rush and causing her head to swim. Every time he kissed her like this, she felt as if she had stepped into another world, where a part of her she never knew existed. She felt as if she could stay like this forever, their lips locked in an eternal embrace. But, at the same time she was afraid of what would happen if it lasted too long. Every time they kissed, the beast that took the strange form of a mysterious heat that filled her body to the brim would come erupting from her core, growing hotter and hotter until it got to the point she had to pull away or else she would explode. Luckily he pulled away first this time. Her vision was blurred and her head swam, she felt drunk. Finally, after a couple of moments, her vision cleared and she could see the concerned look on Naruto-kun's face. He couldn't help but smile, though after their kissing, it gave him a more of an amused look than a concerned look. Hinata hugged him. I'm fine, really. I'm just not getting enough sleep, that's all. I guess there's a lot on my mind lately. Naruto stood up, pulling Hinata up with him, swaying a little from the impact to his head. Well, if you need to talk about anything, I'm always here. And, I guess if it's girl stuff you don't want to talk about with me, you should go talk to Tenten and Sakura, I think. Naruto smiled, just a thought. Quote. Hinata nodded. I think I will, arigato Naruto-kun. She stood on tiptoe and kissed his cheek, then grabbed her clothes and headed to the bathroom to change. Naruto turned pink when Hinata turned her back on him. Her sweatpants seemed to cling to her backside in a very revealing way. Naruto turned around quickly and grabbed his own clothes to change into. He thought that maybe he should take a cold shower this morning as well. Lee's foot was heading high for the back of his head, while Neji's kick was coming from the other side at the same time and aimed for his gut. Naruto didn't have time to think. He leapt into the air and twisted one foot going high, the other going low, and successfully blocking both kicks. Naruto quickly twisted again and struck with his foot at Lee and his fist at Neji. Neji dodged the punch and Lee grabbed his foot and threw him through the air. Naruto flipped and landed lightly on his feet. It hadn't even taken 3 seconds. When he looked up, Neji and Lee were charging again, and this time Hinata was coming up from behind. Naruto ran away from Hinata and charged Neji and Lee head on, jumping into the air and throwing out both of his legs, trying to kick both of their faces at once. Neji and Lee sidestepped just as he hoped. Naruto slammed his hand into the floor, stopping his forward movement and putting him in a one-armed handstand. He twisted, kicking out both of his legs and performing a helicopter kick. He caught Lee in the face and Neji in the ribs, sending them both flying. Not stopping his movement, Naruto brought his legs low so that he was performing sweep kick that looked like a break dance move, attempting to trip Hinata, who had come up behind him. But he hit empty air. Naruto looked up to see Hinata coming down with her knee aimed for his face. Naruto rolled to the side and flipped up to his feet, feeling the rush of air as Hinata landed next to him, her knee cracking the floorboards underneath her. Hinata pushed off from her crouched position with her hands sending both her feet for Naruto's chest. Naruto barely sidestepped as her toes brushed against his shirt. Naruto felt the air stir behind him and jumped into the air on instinct, performing a back flip as both Lee and Neji attempt to sweep his legs from under him. Naruto landed behind Neji and Lee, but they were already moving towards him, Neji sliding low trying to take out his legs and Lee in the air above him, doing a front flip and giving his downward heel slam more momentum. Again Naruto didn't think, just reacted. Naruto grabbed Neji's foot with both of his feet, and caught Lee's foot with both of his hands. Because of Lee's downward momentum and Neji's forward momentum, Naruto found himself flipping forward, pulling Neji up into the air and Lee into a complete flip, so that his back was to him. Naruto pulled hard, letting go of both of them and completing his flip and then striking out with both of his fists at Neji's gut and both feet at Lee's back. Both hits connected, sending Lee and Neji flying. Naruto landed in a heap on the floor, though forcing the wind fr. His lungs. Hinata was above him again, bringing her heel down towards his gut. Naruto couldn't move though. He had been going for 2 hours straight now. He was winded, sore, and he had just lost all of his breath. He held his arms up weakly in an attempt to block and waited for Hinata's kick to crush him. The impact didn't come. Instead, her heel was resting on his forearms as she stood on one leg and looked down at him with a concerned look. Break time. Naruto nodded weakly, and closed eyes, relieved to finally get a little rest. His shirt and pants were soaked with sweat and he was breathing as if he had run all day. Hinata sat behind him and put his head in her crossed legs so that he was looking up at an upside-down face of the most beautiful woman in the world. Naruto closed his eyes blissfully as she began to massage his temples, causing his entire body to relax. He didn't know how she knew this, but one day she had just started massaging his temples, and from then on he had Hinata rub his temples whenever he got stressed. He didn't know why, but it completely relaxed him. Hinata had to stifle a giggle at Naruto-kun's peaceful expression. It had been a week since Naruto's accident, when he tried to wake Hinata up. And they had been training Naruto hard like this every day, 2-on-1 and 3-on-1, some days Sakura and Tenten would join and Naruto would find himself constantly moving to defend and dodge the 5 shinobis attacking him. It was because he had asked them to. If they were attacked in the future, Naruto had already stated that he wasn't going to run and leave them behind. And so Neji and Lee had thought up a training program to put Naruto in the top fighting condition. This involved Neji and Lee double teaming him in sparring, and then Naruto, Hinata and Neji would jutsu duel, where Naruto had to guess the jutsu and successfully dodge and counter it. Sakura, who proved rather good at genjutsu, would perform numerous illusions on Naruto, each one harder than the last, and Naruto would be timed on how long it took him to get out of them. Naruto then did weapons training and target practice with Tenten, racing with Lee through the village, and meditation exercises with Neji. Naruto also found himself in the library every day with Hinata, reading up on battle strategies and jutsus that famous shinobi of the past had used. Naruto found himself reading Shikamaru's book that he had given him, How to Master Chess and Your Opponent. Naruto was amazed at how almost all of the strategies in chess could be used in real-life battle situations. Naruto spent a lot of his free time sitting in the library with Hinata-chan, both buried in their respective books. Naruto reading his chess book, intently studying it and even writing in notes in the margines. He'd have to remind himself to thank Shikamaru properly someday. This book ruled. Neji stood up, rubbing his gut. Your reaction speed is improving rapidly, Naruto. I'm impressed. Naruto raised his eyebrows and grunted in agreement. It was a rare event indeed when Neji gave a comment. If I had my Byakugan active though, you wouldn't have stood a chance. Lee piped up, rubbing his lower back where Naruto had kicked him. Yes. I agree. If I were not wearing these 50-kilo leg weights, I would, how do you put it? Whoop your butt. And I would not even break a sweat. Naruto frowned and grunted and raised his fist in the air, shaking it slightly. Just you wait, I'm going to get up and kick both your ass again, and this time with Hinata performing her temple mage jutsu at the same time. Then we'll see who'd whoop whose butt. Naruto and Lee erupted in laughter, while Hinata giggled at Naruto's playful attitude. Neji half smiled at the stupidity of Naruto's joke. Sakura and Tenten stood up from where they were sitting and walked over to join the group. Sakura walked over and started healing Lee's back, for he had collapsed on the ground from laughing too hard and sending pain through his entire backside. He and Naruto were still laughing though, no matter how much it hurt. Sakura sighed. Would they ever grow up? Alright, joke's over. Time for your genjutsu training, Naruto. Naruto sighed with an exasperated tone. Can we please take a break today? We've been training like this for over weeks straight. Can we have at least one day off? Neji frowned. We shouldn't. Sure. Everyone looked up at Tenten. Tenten just shrugged. Sure, why not? We should take a break at least once a week so that we don't overwork ourselves, especially you Naruto, since most of this training is really for you. She then turned to a confused Sakura and gave her peculiar yet meaningful look. Sakura's face lit up in a smile and both she and Tenten leapt forward, grabbing Hinata by the arms and dragging her out of the dojo. Sakura looked over her shoulder at a protesting Hinata and stated mischievously, "You're always in that musty library, you haven't even gone to the baths with me and Tenten once. You need to relax some, besides, weren't there things you needed to talk to us about?" Hinata blushed at what Sakura meant, and allowed herself to be dragged towards the girls' bathhouse. Naruto watched helplessly as his source of temple maging was dragged bodily away. Lee stood up, stretching his newly healed back. We should probably take baths as well, my comrades. The spring of youth may be strong in us, but I fear we are in need of some rest and relaxation as well. Neji nodded in agreement. I would prefer not to return to my room smelling like a pigsty. Naruto nodded too and jumped running for the door. Last one, there's got to lick the dirt off my foot. Quote. Lee leapt after him. I shall not lick the soil from your foot, comrade. That shall be Neji's doing. Hearing this, Neji also sprinted after them. I am not licking Naruto's foot. Nevertheless, Naruto ended up licking his own foot, much to the amusement of Neji and Lee. The baths were both outdoor hot springs. How there could be hot springs 400 feet in the air, none of them could really figure out. They figured that the baths, which were made from rock like real springs, were somehow lifted into the branches, filled with water, and constantly kept heat to a comfortable temperature with some strange jutsu none of them had ever heard of. Both baths were surrounded with shrubbery and bushes and were encircled with a wooden fence to prevent anyone from accidentally falling. Both baths were separated by the same fence. Neji sat in the water on one of the underwater stone benches and rested his head on the rocky poolside, his eyes closed. Naruto and Lee, on the other hand, took turns performing cannonballs and flips in the deep section of the pool. On the other side, Hinata was being interrogated by Sakura and Tenten, again. Do you two still sleep in separate beds? Or do two sleep together now, like when we were traveling here? Sakura was asking this, her eyebrow raised questioningly. Both her and Tenten's eyes sparkled with barely controlled curiosity. Both of them were standing so that the water came up to their waists. Hinata though had sunk into the water until the water covered her mouth and she was breathing from her nose. She shook her head slowly, feeling the blush spread through her body. She was glad she was mostly submersed. Sakura looked shocked. What? But you two shared the same sleeping bag on our way here. What's wrong with sleeping in the same bed? Tenten nodded in agreement. Hinata lifted her head so she could use her mouth. It's because we weren't alone when we were on our way here. Now though, being in the same bed with would be like. Exactly, girl. Tenten had jumped up, splashing both of them. You've got to get him when he's not expecting it. Tenten slammed her fist into her palm. Sneak up on him and take him down. Hinata and Sakura looked up, dumbfounded at Tenten's excitement. She blushed and sank into the water so that she was level with Hinata and stared into the water. I mean, when are you going to get another chance, Hinata? After we leave here you'll be back with your clan, and we all know that your father hates Naruto. If I got a chance like that, I wouldn't waste it, that's all I'm trying to say. Sakura smiled, understanding. She's right, Hinata. You and Naruto are finally alone, it's not like you and Naruto will get another chance like this. Besides, I seriously don't know how you can lay there at night with that gorgeous body of his right next to you and not take advantage of it. Hinata blushed again. I'm just not sure if that's what I want yet. I mean, I know I'm 16 and that's old enough to get married. But isn't it wrong to do it before you're married? Sakura smiled. Only if you think so, sweetie. Tell me, do you love him? Yes. Of course I do. Tenten spoke up. With all of your heart. Why yes. Hinata frowned. She didn't understand what they were trying to get at now. Sakura looked down into Hinata's eyes. Do you want to marry him? And if so, do you plan on it? Hinata blushed. Why yes I do. And, Hinata's voice took on a determined tone, and I will marry him if the last thing I do. Sakura then said bluntly, and if you two were to have premarital, would it feel wrong? Hinata blushed uncontrollably at Sakura's bluntness. No. No, it wouldn't. Not at all. Sakura couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at the certainty in Hinata's voice, and now. Do you want to? Hinata shook her head. I don't know, it's weird but, oh, never mind. Sakura and Tenten on the other hand leaned forward, curiosity literally written on their faces. Tenten held up a finger and shook it at Hinata. Oh, no you don't. You don't start telling us a secret and stop with, never mind. We agreed to share all our secrets with each other and keep them secret, remember? Now come on, spill. Sakura nodded her head vigorously in agreement. Hinata sighed. She could never lie to them, or any of her friends for that matter, and once Sakura and Tenten wanted to know something, it was best just to avoid the pain and tell them, 'cause they were going to find out anyway. Like it or not, Hinata breathed in deeply before starting. Well, when we kiss, or when he gets close to me, or when I see his, half-gorgeous body, I feel this, I don't know, it's kind of like this burning heat. That starts here. Hinata stood up and pressed her hands to her tummy, and then spreads all over, all the way to my fingertips and toes and to my face. And I feel like I'm a totally different person. Hinata was pacing back and forth now, getting into the explanation. She had never told anyone about this before and she desperately wanted to know if anyone knew what it was. I mean, when he first came back I'd feel it and want to do things that I've never thought I'd ever do, like hugging and kissing him. Then after the Chunin exam, it just got worse. After that day in the hospital when we first kissed, I can't explain it, whether it's because he told me he loved me or because of the dreams I've been having, but it gets stronger every time. I mean, at first it was this warmth that made me tingle all over, but now it's this raging inferno that's fighting to get out. I feel numb and tingly all over, I can't see or even think straight. I feel like an animal. An animal that's hunting, and my prey is Naruto-kun. And every time we kiss, and even now every time we're alone and he touches me it gets stronger and stronger, and I just don't know what would happen, if I just let it take over. Quote. Hinata stopped ranting and pacing and turned to look at Sakura and Tenten, who were both in the water up to their necks, both of them breathing hard and their faces flushed. Hinata realized she was in the same condition from her vivid description and dropped quickly into the water, turning beet red all over so that she resembled a lobster. Sakura could only stare wide-eyed. Wow. A few more moments passed before she spoke again. You really feel like that when you guys kiss? Hinata nodded slowly. I didn't know it was so bad with you. Quote. Hinata looked up, confused. What do you mean? Do you know what it is? Sakura and Tenten both nodded. Tenten spoke up. I definitely know what it is, of course I don't have it as bad as you, girlfriend. Sakura nodded. I know a little bit too. Hinata, you want him, bad, 'cause girl what you're feeling is lust. Hinata's eyes widened. Lust. But isn't that wrong? Sakura shook her head. It's okay to lust after the one you love, as long you still love them and just don't want them for the quote. Hinata shook her head. I would never do that to him. I love him. I don't want anything but him, completely. Hinata said the last in a barely audible whisper. Sakura hear it though. Oh boy, you definitely want him. From what Tsunade-sensei tells me, if you don't do it soon on your own accord, you're going to do it sooner or later whether you like it or not, and it's going to be when you lose control of yourself. That could be bad or good, it depends, I guess. Quote. Hinata nodded her head, slowly coming to grips with the truth of what she was feeling. But she still had too many doubts. But what about my father? What if we do and I'm horrible at it, or I try and he doesn't want to? Tears began to leak from her eyes at that last thought. She'd understand if Naruto didn't want to, but she couldn't help but feel crushed at the thought that he would reject her. Sakura and Tenten came forward and began to comfort Hinata. Once she had calmed down a little, Sakura put both her hands on Hinata's shoulders and looked her in the eye. Alright, I have to get rid of your doubts. First, ever since you told Naruto that you loved him, ever since you did the Chunin exam actually, when did you care what your father really thought about you? He doesn't treat you with respect, Hinata, and even though I know that all parents would be against it, the truth is, I've never seen something so right when I see you and Naruto together. So who the hell cares what the old windbag thinks? Hinata smiled slightly at the jest and nodded her head. Sakura was right, she had given up on gaining her father's respect when he removed her from the position of heir. She had realized not too long ago that she hadn't done the Chunin exam for her father, or even for Naruto. But for herself, to prove to herself that she wasn't the trash that her father thought she was. And to prove that she was the strong individual that Naruto-kun believed her to be. Sakura smiled as Hinata's self-esteem began to recover. Second, about you sucking in bed. Tsunade-sensei happens to talk a lot about her life when she's had a bit too much to drink. I trained with her for 3 years every day, and I've heard some things that could curdle milk. To say the least, she was pretty active in her early years before she met Mr. Right. But I also happened to learn a lot of useful secrets pertaining to our discussion. Probably more than a girl my age should know, but I think you need this knowledge more than me, so you and I are going to have a little discussion on techniques. Hinata turned pink at the evil grin Sakura gave her. She was embered that Sakura-chan was going to tell her some very explicit things. But at the same time she could feel herself yearning to know. If she was going to sleep with Naruto, she wanted him to enjoy it as much as possible. She suddenly realized that she had made her decision, that she really was going to before they left the tree house. But then the thought of her last objection quickly stifled her confidence. Sakura saw Hinata's face drop, and as for number 3, do you really think Naruto would do something like that? And even if he did, do you really think he'd do it in a way that would be hurtful to you? Hinata thought about his for a moment, and shook her head. Naruto would never hurt her, physically or emotionally. Sakura continued though, plus, he's a guy, Hinata. Trust me, he wants to too. Knowing him, he probably tries to avoid thinking about it for the same reasons you do. Because he doesn't want to suck, because he's afraid you'd reject cause you don't want to, or because you'd think he's perverted. I know for a fact that he avoids trying to act perverted like that Jiraiya guy. Naruto's gotten older, he's grown up now. Hinata nodded. What Sakura said made sense, though it embered her a little bit that Naruto thought the same things as her. She wondered if he thought about it, or dreamed about it like she did. The thought made her blush. Neji couldn't believe his ears. What? Naruto smiled wickedly. Come on. Let's spy on the girls. I used to do stuff like that when I was 12, it's awesome for learning how to do the Waijutsu. Come on, it'll be fun. Neji frowned. Naruto, we're not 12 anymore, we're 16, in Konoha we're technically adults. Don't you think we're a little too young to pull off childish pranks like that? Besides, I think it will be different for you now, Naruto. Spying on girls is a little bit different when you're a teenager and going through puberty. Naruto shrugged. Whatever, come on Neji, it'll be great. What about you Lee? I can't do it without you guys. Naruto looked over his shoulder to find Lee blushing and staring into the water. Lee looked up at the mention of his name. But what if we are caught Naruto-san? Quote. Naruto laughed. Then we run away. Duh. They'll never be able to catch us, and we can lock ourselves in our rooms for a bit until they calm down. Besides we won't get caught, trust me. Neji only frowned more. Naruto, you're an idiot. Quote. Lee started staring into the water again. I don't know. Naruto put his arm over Lee's shoulders. Come on buddy. Trust me it will be great. Plus, Sakura-chan is over there too ya know. Lee's eyes went wide at that thought. Well, I guess, if we don't get caught it would be okay, I guess. Naruto laughed and slapped him on the back. That's the spirit Lee-san. You rule. Now come on Neji, Lee's joining me. Neji crossed his arms stubbornly. Lee, you're an idiot too. Naruto smiled evilly. He had already figured out what would get Neji to do it. Well Neji, it would be a shame if you didn't come, I mean Tenten's over there too you know. All hot and steamy like, but I guess if you don't want to then Lee and I will go by ourselves. Naruto turned and grabbed Lee's arm, and began to head towards the fence that separated the girls' side from the boys. It didn't take long at all. Wait. Naruto smiled to himself in triumph. He turned to see Neji stand smoothly from his sitting position, a cool expression on his face. Though he was pink slightly in the cheeks, I guess I'm an idiot as well. Quote. Naruto put his arm around Neji's shoulders. Welcome to the club man. Come on let's go. Neji though, couldn't figure out how Naruto had found out. Naruto let go of both of them once they reached the fence. They couldn't hear anything from the other side, as if there was a sound barrier of some sort. Naruto gathered his chakra and performed the ox hand sign, and whispered, wood warp jutsu. 3 holes formed in the wood, each big enough for someone to look through and not be noticed from the other side. As the holes opened, Naruto could suddenly hear the girls' voices talking. Neji smiled. I don't need that, and then quickly activated his Byakugan. Naruto grinned. He and Lee pressed their eyes to the peepholes. The 3 girls were standing up and facing each other and whispering about something. Naruto noticed that the water only came to their waists. Naruto suddenly realized what Neji meant about how it would be different now that he was well into puberty. Hinata had her back to him, but he had never seen so much of her skin exposed before. He froze. This is exactly the thing that Ero Sennin did. He was just justifying it to himself because of the difference in age when he was 12. Now though, he knew exactly why Jiraiya did this. He was about to turn away and numbly go to the locker room and take a nice cold shower when Hinata turned towards the fence to head over to her towel, giving Naruto a full view of her front and at the same time exposing the fronts of Sakura and Tent. Boom. As one, Neji, Lee and Naruto went flying backwards as their noses exploded in waterfalls of blood, causing them to twist through the air like rag dolls and skid across the water before coming to a halt. Naruto had never seen so much of Hinata, ever. He was ashamed, but at the same time part of him was drooling uncontrollably. He had never felt such, he had no other word for it but wanting. Wanting to go back over there and look at Hinata some more, wanting to put his hands, damn it, I'm no better than Ero Sennin. Lee and Neji who lay sprawled in the water next to him were apparently thinking the same mixed thoughts. But then their deep thinking was disturbed by a female voice. What was that Sakura? Quote. Naruto saw Neji's eyes, which were using the Byakugan still, go wide with an instinctual fear. She's coming. Neji leapt out of the water and headed for the locker rooms. He looked over his shoulder, run. Hide. And then suddenly disappeared through a door. Lee suddenly disappeared as well. Without his leg weights he was gone in a flash, reaching the locker room door before it even closed. Leaving Naruto, still sprawled in the bath and with nowhere to go. He had never seen them move so fast before. The fence suddenly exploded as someone punched it. Sakura looked around, expecting to find three dumbfounded, peeping Toms. But the bath was empty, with no sign of male activity. She frowned. She was sure she had heard their voices for a moment and then some sort of weird explosion. She shook her head, maybe it had all been their imagination. She performed a quick jutsu to repair the fence and turned back towards the girls. Tenten raised an eyebrow. What was it, Sakura? Sakura shook her head and shrugged. Nothing, I guess. Come on, let's hit the showers. She then turned to Hinata and drew her close, whispering lightly into her ear. Now that covers most of things you can do when he's on top, now when you're on top. Quote. Hinata was slowly turning so red that she was beginning to turn a dark purple. Some of the things Sakura was telling her, like what to do basically, and what it was supposed to be like for her first time, she already knew about from textbooks she snuck peeks at when she was younger. But Sakura was telling her things she had never even imagined, not even in her dreams, like what she could do with variously shaped objects to different positions. She didn't know if this would help her or make it worse, but she could already tell her dreams were going to be 10 times worse than the why were before. She was never going to get any sleep now. One of the rocks at the bottom of the boys' bath suddenly exploded in a puff of white smoke and Naruto breached the surface and gasped as he filled his lungs with oxygen. Apparently even in rock form he still had to breathe. He had always been good at using the transform jutsu at a moment's notice. He considered himself extremely lucky. If Sakura had found him, well, to put it simply, the mission would be over because there was no reason to guard a pile of bloody pull. Naruto silently vowed that he would never pull that particular stunt again, especially with Hinata. Just from this first experience he wasn't sure whether he could control himself next time. He went to the locker room, and found Lee and Neji both drenching themselves in ice-cold water, both standing with arms straight and their hands against the wall, so that the shower water hit the back of their heads and flowed down their back. Naruto went to the shower between the two men, turned on the cold nozzle to full blast, and promptly joined them. Naruto wondered how he would ever get to sleep tonight with these thoughts in his head. None of them left the showers for another half hour. All right, there you go, you disgusting perverts out there. Wait, what am I saying? I wanted to do this chapter. Well, I'm not sure yet, but I know that within, probably the next couple of chapters, I'm going to have to change this story's rating to M. For obvious reasons. Oh yes, I wish to point out, notice how Hinata's desire, lust changes and becomes more intense after she was healed by the chakra in Naruto's armbands, just pointing that out. Cough. Anyway, give me reviews, give them to me now. Those of you who don't, I shall cast your pathetic souls into the fiery pits of hell, and I shall have Satan poke you in the with his pitchfork for all eternity. Muahahaha. Yeah. So, review please. Tenten slowly opened her eyes, and glared at the roof above her bed, where the loud thumping noise was coming from. She saw across from her Sakura sitting up and rubbing the sleep in her eyes. Tenten slowly sat up as well. Maybe we could force them to the other side of the village. Sakura shook her head. Can't do that sadly, we're his bodyguards, remember. Sakura frowned at the ceiling as well though, but he doesn't have to blast it so loud. I don't know how Hinata deals with being woken up by that music. Tenten grinned to herself. I'd deal with it if I got to see him dance in his boxers every morning. Tenten sighed. I swear, if you ask me, Hinata has got all the luck. Quote. Sakura crossed her arms and stuck out her lip. He doesn't have to blast it so loud though, other people live here too. Sakura flopped back down on her bed. If it wasn't for the fact that Hinata said she was okay with it, I'd have beaten the snot out of him 2 months ago. She then buried her head under her pillow in an attempt to block out the deep, vibrating B. Tenten sighed and got up to shower and eat some breakfast. She knew better. The entire room was vibrating from the music. Sakura was not going to get any more sleep. Neji growled under his breath. Naruto. For the past 3 months everyone in the tree house had been awakened by Naruto's music, if it could be even called that. Well, Not everyone exactly. Neji was envious of Lee-san's seemingly unlimited amount of energy. He was always the earliest to rise, so that he could go to the dojo and get a head start on the day's training. Neji slowly sat up and rubbed his eyes, yawning hard. He got up and walked over to his kitchenette and started to brew his coffee. Everyone told him he was cranky, more than usual, when he didn't have his morning coffee. Neji activated his Byakugan and stared through the floorboards in the direction the deep thumping of Naruto's subwoofers was coming from. He usually didn't invade other people's privacy with his blood limit. But since Naruto felt the need to invade everyone's privacy with his damn music, then he had no problem using the Byakugan when he was awoken by the blonde ninjas, heavy metal. Neji quickly shut his blood limit off. Does he always have to parade around in his boxers? How can Hinata deal with that? Neji poured his coffee, keeping a steady hand on the cup. The counter was vibrating that hard. Lee executed a perfect roundhouse in midair, and was continuing the turn to perform a sweep kick when he lost his balance and landed smack on his rear. His tailbone was bruised, again. Lee was finding it difficult for the past couple of months to train in the mornings. Does Naruto really have to turn up his music so loud? Lee remembered Guy-sensei lecturing him on how loud music could damage his ears and impair his hearing. One of the main reasons he got up so early to train, to try and escape the noise. But even here, at the dojo and a half-hour walk from the central tree, Lee could still hear the thumping of Naruto's 6-foot-tall subwoofers. And it had been distracting him beyond reason. Lee couldn't figure it out. Normally such things as noise and music didn't faze him when he was in the mid-l of his training. But for some reason the chaotic beat of Naruto's music had been throwing him off balance and causing him to lose his concentration. Lee found himself tapping his foot, or lightly bobbing his head to the beat of the bee. He couldn't help it. Even now, nursing his sore rear, he was tapping his foot idly to the distant beat. Lee worried about Naruto, even if his music was throwing him off balance. Even though Hinata said she was okay with Naruto's morning serenade, he couldn't help thinking that Sakura-chan was on the brink of snapping and tearing apart Naruto for disturbing her sleep. Of course he thought that she wouldn't be so tired if she didn't stay up so late every night. Lee got up again and entered the crane stance, maybe if he tried going with the beat of the music. Hinata couldn't help but enjoy the music and the sight she had awoken to. She had fallen in love with the heavy radical beats of heavy metal a long time ago. She loved it nearly as much as Naruto. Matter of fact, she considered it a part of Naruto's personality, and therefore loved it even more. She was sitting up in bed now, giggling at the sight before her. Naruto was dancing in his boxers again, which always made her think of some of the things Sakura had told her about, and in turn making her blush. Naruto had gotten better at seeing her blushes lately and usually asked what was wrong. He still didn't understand why she blushed though. This morning was special though. Instead of playing one of his countless CDs, Naruto had hooked up his electric guitar and was playing one of his own songs for her this morning. She recognized it. Naruto had named it, My Heart's Lavender Eye. He had named, and composed it for her for their 6-month anniversary. She loved it. She supposed other people wouldn't consider rock music suitable for a love song, but she thought it was perfect. The loud noise, the fast beats, and the ordered chaos reminded her of the raw energy she felt when she and Naruto kissed and held each other, and when he did certain things, such as dancing in his boxers while rocking out to My Heart's Lavender Eye. She didn't try and be discreet when she was around Naruto-kun anymore. She openly admired the sweat-glistening muscles and the swaying hips of her heart's love, even though she blushed until her entire face was red. Ever since Sakura and Tenten had a nice long talk with her, Hinata had found herself staring at certain parts of Naruto's anatomy that, in the past, she normally would have refrained from looking at out of decency. Namely his thighs, chest, abs, shoulders and more specifically, his. She had never called someone's rear end, but she couldn't help but think of Naruto-kun's butt as a definite, and well-defined She had also become very conscious of the way she looked over the past several months. Ever since she noticed that one morning that Naruto-kun was definitely staring at her butt, she had asked Sakura about what she should do. Do you not like it when Naruto looks at you? Sakura frowned. Cause if so, you should just tell him, even though you said he always looks away as soon as he realizes what he's doing. Hinata shook her head. She was standing in the middle of one of the bridges with Sakura and Tenten on either side of her. No, it's not that Sakura-chan. I kind of like the fact that Naruto was looking at me like that. No one's ever looked at me like, she couldn't think of a good description. Like a hungry animal. Like he wants to make sweet peanut love to you. Sakura apparently had no problem thinking of a good description. Hinata's eyes went wide, and she could feel the blush creep up her neck. Well, I wouldn't have put it like that exactly, but why yes, that's the feeling I got. Sakura raised an eyebrow, and you liked it. Then what's there to complain about? You look great, and he apparently thinks so too. Hinata stared at her toes and began to twiddle her fingers. Sakura raised an eyebrow. Hinata hadn't done that for a while now, she must be really nervous about this. Well, you see, I noticed he only does that in the morning. I don't know why, sometimes he does it while we're training, but not as often. I figure he's just watching my kicks most of the time. Tenten giggled uncontrollably from the other side of the room. I've got an answer for that. At Hinata's questioning look she continued, he's not watching your kicks girl, he's admiring your legs, and of course he's looking at your butt in the morning. It all has to do with what you wear. Hinata frowned, confused. What do you mean Tenten? I don't think Tenten answered abruptly, he's admiring your features because he can see your bod. Sakura nodded, giggling as well. When you're training you wear those short shorts Ino gave you, right? Naruto apparently finds your legs attractive, and since you're not wearing those baggy pants anymore, he can clearly see them. And in the morning I've seen you wear those sweatpants. They cling to your butt I guess you could say, so Naruto's got a good view of that too. Sakura stopped giggling and smiled her evil smile. You want to know how to get him to look at you more in that certain way, don't you? Hinata took a few moments before nodding her head, embered. No wonder Naruto had liked those shorts the first day he had seen them. She then smiled, excitement brewing inside of her. How do I do it? Tenten and Sakura smiled. First you've got to stop wearing that dreadful coat. Only wear it when it's cold. Geez. The shorts, they're good, but I got some tight-fitting jeans I'm willing to let you borrow, and now she wore clothes that she never would have been seen in outside her house, maybe not even inside with her father there. Her wardrobe now consisted mostly of tight-fitting pants and shorts, and revealing shirts. Tenten and Sakura thought she looked great, and because they also wore the same clothes she didn't feel the least bit uncomfortable. Of course all the new clothes she was wearing now were borrowed from both Tenten and Sakura. When she first wore them, a pair of slim jeans and a lavender spaghetti strap that exposed her shoulders and a little bit of her belly, she got varying reactions from the guys. Lee-san barely reacted, he just assumed the new clothing was meant for training. When Neji saw her he stumbled and began to cough uncontrollably. He finally commented in a hoarse voice that she looked good, and then quickly strode away towards the dojo. Naruto's was by far the most satisfying. She had been walking towards the dojo when she found Naruto-kun in the middle of one of the bridges, leaning against the rail and looking at the sky through the distant leaves. He didn't notice her until she was standing right next to him. Naruto looked over to find two lavender eyes looking intently into his own. Hello Hina. Naruto stuttered as he caught sight of what she was wearing. His eyes traveled slowly down her body, lingering on her shoulders and hips, his eyes getting wider and wider and his cheeks turning from pink to a deep crimson. Naruto tore his eyes away and tried his hardest to look only at Hinata's eyes. Hinata blushed and lowered her face. She wasn't expecting such a strong reaction from Naruto-kun. Sakura-chan and Tenten-chan let me borrow some of their clothes. I figured it would be nice to try something new. Hinata breathed in deeply. So, what do you think? Hinata raised only her eyes to see Naruto's face. She was trying her hardest to resist twiddling her fingers right then. Naruto's raised his eyebrows in surprise at the question, and then smiled. Well, I'm not sure what your father would say, but I think you look awesome. Naruto blew out his breath, whistling lightly. I mean, wow. Quote. Hinata smiled and looked up into Naruto's face. Really? She was beginning to feel warm inside. She didn't think Naruto-kun wouldn't like her clothes, but she was glad all the same that he really did like her new style. Naruto grinned. He loved it when Hinata smiled like that. He began to scratch the back of his head and blushed slightly. You look amazing. He then pulled to her into a warm hug. Now he was very aware of Hinata's exposed shoulders and her bare belly pressed up against him, and his body was responding in the worst possible way. He almost regretted hugging her, almost. Hinata definitely wasn't regretting it. They hugged and kissed all the time, but she still wished that they did even more. She was finding it difficult to be away from him for any extended period of time. As she rested in his arms, she realized he was aware of her more exposed look, as she felt his body responding to his thoughts. She blushed and could tell that he was about to gently push her away before he lost control, but taking Sakura's advice, she gripped him tighter and pressed herself against him. She instantly blushed a deep crimson as she felt Naruto's arousal grow against her pelvis. Naruto felt Hinata-chan press herself against him just as he was about to push her away and spare both of them from the embarment. His entire body went stiff as he awaited the inevitable scream or slap. But instead she just hugged him more, running her hands up and down his back. He responded in kind. He could feel his heartbeat pounding in his chest like a hammer, and he could feel Hinata-chan's light but fast heartbeat against him as well. He didn't know what was going on, but he was suddenly wishing they were back in their room right then, alone and away from prying eyes. After some time of listening to each other's heartbeats and heavy breathing, they slowly stepped away from each other. They smiled as they blushed and found it difficult to look each other in the eye. When they finally did look each other in the eye, they hugged again and kissed. Naruto didn't fully understand what had just happened, but he liked it a lot. They held each other's hands as they walked to the dojo to train. That had been 3 months ago. Soon after Hinata had started wearing her new clothes, Naruto had begun to wake her up in the mornings by playing her favorite rock songs and dancing around in his boxers. They quickly found out that neither of them were embarrassed with seeing the other in their underwear. Matter of fact, they both enjoyed seeing each other barely clothed, even though they never admitted it to the other. They had been at the tree house for over 6 months now, their 6th-month anniversary being just last month. In that time they had grown stronger, in body, mind, soul, and most of all in their love. Hinata felt more in love with Naruto than ever before. She wondered sometimes as she lay in her bed, listening to the soft breathing that was Naruto, whether her love for the blue-eyed leaf nin would ever stop growing, or whether she would eventually explode from the amount of care, need and love she felt for him. And little to her knowledge, Naruto wondered the exact same things. But for the time being she merely enjoyed herself as she watched the most beautiful thing in her life dance and gyrate in front of her. Finally, he finished the song and leaned on his guitar as he caught his breath. Dancing around like that every morning should constitute as his workout for the day. He sat down on the end of Hinata's bed as he panted and sweated. Hinata still slept in her own bed, and even though he knew it was probably best at the moment that they didn't sleep under the same covers, part of him, a big part of him, had a hard time not crawling in bed with her in the middle of the night. It wasn't the same anymore when they slept snuggled against each other when they were at his house back in Konoha, or when they shared the same sleeping bag on their 2-week hike here to the tree house. He felt that something had changed, not only in him, but in both of them. He could feel a sort of tension between them. It wasn't bad, but he could tell it was important. And he felt that once that tension snapped, some very unexpected things were going to happen. Not necessarily anything bad, but very unexpected. He leaned over and met Hinata halfway in a kiss. He also noticed that the kisses he was giving Hinata were getting slightly deeper and deeper. Just as the tension began to grow, so did the length of their kissing. Hinata slipped out of her covers and held him as they kissed, leaning against him. He was tired though and couldn't hold both of them up, and promptly fell on his back on Hinata's bed, bringing her down with him. The fact that she was on top of him and only in a pair of lavender bra and panties was not aiding him in his battle for self-control. He waited until she pulled away first though, which was much longer than he expected, leaving both of them flushed and breathing heavily. Naruto smiled and touched Hinata's face. "I love you." Hinata smiled. Tears always began to brim at her eyes when he told her that he loved her. She was never happier than when he said those 3 words, not when they were talking, not when they were hugging, not even when they were kissing. She felt she could live off of those words, "I love you too, so much." And found herself being pulled into another kiss. Naruto forced himself to pull away this time. He felt a little dizzy from the rushes he was starting to get from kissing Hinata lately. We should get dressed, everyone will be wondering where we are if we're late to training." Hinata smiled and got up to dress in the bathroom. Naruto had to close his eyes and do some meditative breathing. He had to resist the need to go and join Hinata in her changing. Naruto bent over double, his hands on his knees as he tried to catch his breath. It had been another long morning of workouts and training. He was nearly as fast Lee now. When Lee was wearing his 10-kilogram leg weights, that is, he was stronger and his endurance had nearly doubled. Neji, Lee, Sakura, Tenten and Hinata had to take turns sparring against him because they would collapse from exhaustion when he still had no problem standing. Now though after 5 straight hours of sparring he figured collapsing from exhaustion was a pretty good idea. He was improving greatly in sparring and jutsu dueling. His genjutsu still sucked to hell, but his mastery of weapons was coming close to equaling Tenten. And of course everyone else was improving as well from the constant sparring. Naruto breathed deeply, trying to replenish his oxygen-starved muscles. At least tomorrow was his off day. He'd be able to spend some time with Hinata in the library or something. Maybe he could convince her to ride one of the zip lines with him. Probably not. Sakura and Tenten got up and began to drag Hinata away from the breathless Naruto to go take a bath. Hinata gave Naruto a worried look. She always did that when he went past his limit and she was the only one who knew when he did. He nodded at her. "Go take your bath, I'm fine. I'll see you in a little bit." Hinata frowned but followed Sakura and Tenten anyways. Over the past 7 months that they had been together, Naruto and Hinata had become more aware of the one they loved. She knew when he pushed himself to harden and he lied about it. Naruto chuckled hoarsely. By now she could probably tell when he lied about anything. Naruto got up and started heading to the men's baths, when Neji called out. "Naruto, there's a couple of moves I need to go over with you." Quote. Naruto turned around, confusion plain on his face. They had already done their sparring review while he was trying to catch his breath. Naruto noticed everyone else had stopped as well, wondering what Neji wanted to go over. Neji gave Naruto an intense look, trying his hardest to not look towards the girls. "There's some moves that I believe I performed poorly. I need you to help me go over them, in private if you don't mind." Quote. Naruto shook his head. "But didn't we already go over everything we did wrong? Besides, Neji always did everything perfectly. No flaws in his techniques ever. What the hell was he talking about?" Lee and the girls also wore the same confused looks as Naruto. Neji though gave a sharp jerk of his head towards the training mats. "If you don't mind, Naruto." Naruto was still confused. "Why did you jerk your head like that? There's something you want to tell me?" Neji rolled his eyes and looked to the heavens. No matter how much he had improved in body and in intelligence, Naruto was still failed in one aspect of the mind. He was utterly clueless when it came to social etiquette. "Naruto, just get your dumb over here now." Naruto shrugged and waved over his shoulder at Hinata. See you after I'm done with my bath. And then proceeded to jog over to Neji. The others slowly left the dojo to soak themselves in the glorious heat of the bath water, all the time wondering what was up with Neji. Naruto stood facing Neji and waited until everyone was out of the dojo. Okay, I think I get it now that you didn't want to go over some moves that you never messed up on, right? Neji slapped himself in the face, covering his eyes and waiting until the count of 10 to open his oath. No, Naruto, I wanted to talk to you in private. Naruto raised his eyebrows in surprise. Didn't think you were the one to tell secrets, Neji. So, what is it? Neji took a deep breath. Remember that day when we, spied on the, girls? Quote. Naruto nodded, blushing slightly and scratching the back of his head. Yeah, I remember. Very well. Neji blushed as well. Well, you convinced me to do it by mentioning Tenten. How did you know that it would convince me? Quote. Naruto shrugged. I don't know, it was sort of obvious, I guess. Neji gave a confused look. What do you mean it was obvious? I mean, what was obvious? Neji really was confused. What was Naruto talking about? How was anything obvious to Naruto? Wasn't he supposed to be the clueless one? But right at that moment Neji felt like the clueless one. Naruto grinned at his comrade's confusion. Well, I noticed that while we trained for the first week that you wouldn't stop watching Tenten when she was on the ATS. And I guess when I really thought about it, I guess I looked the same as you when I looked at Hinata. I could see it in your eyes, man. It was obvious for anyone who already knew what it looked like, 'cause I did. I see it in Hinata's eyes every day when she looks at me. Quote. Neji was starting to feel anxious, but what was obvious, Naruto? It was true. Neji felt something he had never felt before when he looked at Tenten. It was close to another feeling, the feeling he had for his father and the rest of his family, but it was different. He could tell he felt some sort of attachment towards Tenten. He could even guess at what it was, but he couldn't admit it to himself. It was as if he needed Naruto to tell him what it was. Naruto, tell me, please. Quote. Naruto smiled. That you're in love with her, man. That you're in love with her. Naruto gave Neji a slap on the shoulder and turned to head for the door. Halfway there he stopped and looked over his shoulder. If I were you, Neji, I'd tell her as soon as possible, before she stops looking at you. The same way you look at her. Naruto proceeded to the baths, leaving a very stunned and very dizzy Neji behind him. It had been 3 days since Naruto had forced Neji to confront his feelings. Neji couldn't sleep. He kept mulling over what he felt inside his head. He couldn't help it. Now that he knew he was in love, he felt that he had to tell her. And Naruto had made it sound like she felt the same way. That was absurd though. Girls stayed away from him for a reason. He was cold and devoid of feeling. At least he tried his hardest to make it seem that way. In clan life, the branch family was sworn to protect the main family, sworn to give not only their lives, but their entire being over to the Ain family. All for the clan. Neji realized after his father died that he had to be cold, he had to be ruthless, and he had to make sure that his feelings didn't get in the way, so when the day came he could give his life for the good of the clan. For he would never escape his fate, there was nothing he could do about it. Now of course he didn't think that way anymore, thanks to Naruto. Naruto, who touched everyone's lives around him, and made everyone he met want to be better, stronger, and more true not only to others but to themselves. Neji felt like that the day he fought Naruto and was beaten, through sheer force of will Naruto won that match, changed his fate, and Neji's as well. Neji started to relax and became more involved with his teammates' lives, and with his family's lives. He no longer spent all day training to serve the main family, but began to spend more time with people. He even went to a few parties that Tenten and Lee convinced him to go to. Strangely, dancing wildly to music with 100 other people around him was actually quite fun. He hadn't had fun in such a long time. And so as 3 years passed while Naruto was on his training trip with Jiraiya, Neji found himself feeling emotions that he couldn't figure out. especially when it had to deal with Tenten. And because of Naruto once again, he was able to find a piece of the puzzle. Now all he had to do was tell Tenten what that puzzle piece meant. This was going to be harder than he thought. Neji knew he had to tell her, tonight, or else he never would, for he never knew he would have to work the courage to do something before. He couldn't understand it. It wasn't like he was entering a life-threatening situation, or standing trial for breaking clan law, but no matter how hard he tried, he could feel his knees shaking when he thought about telling Tenten. All he was going to do was tell her how he felt and then tell her that he would make sure that his feelings for her would not get in the way of their professional relationship as teammates and ultimately their relationship as friends. But for the life of him he couldn't figure out how he felt such a strong emotion when he thought about doing something that was supposed to be so simple, for what he felt was fear. He didn't know what he feared, but he was afraid to tell Tenten what he felt, afraid that something would happen, or YBE it was because something wouldn't happen. Neji took a deep breath and took a look at himself in the bathroom mirror. It was nighttime, around midnight. This was usually when Tenten went on her midnight stroll after grabbing a snack from the common room kitchen. Nights when Neji found it difficult to sleep and went on his own midnight strolls, he would sometimes see her standing in the middle of one of the bridges, the only one that allowed a clear view of the night sky. Neji shook himself and dressed himself in a robe and pajama bottoms. No need to make this formal, he was going to be calm and casual about it. But as he quietly closed the door behind him, he didn't feel so calm and casual. It took him about an hour to walk to the bridge he remembered seeing Tenten at. It was a warm summer night, and light breeze blew through the tree branches, making the temperature pleasantly comfortable. As he drew closer to his destination though, Neji could feel a pit begin to open in his chest, and the fear began to seep in. He stomped on the fear as he would a snake, forcing it back into the bottomless pit. The pit, to his dismay, remained though. Finally he could see the bridge not too far away, but he couldn't see anyone on it. He was instantly filled with disappointment and joy. Joy at not having to tell Tenten, and disappointment that he would never tell her. He continued towards it though, and as he rounded a branch and came to the branch he could see her leaning with her back to the rail, looking up at the star-filled sky, a half-eaten Twinkie in her hand. Neji had never seen anything so beautiful in his life, even the pastry she held in her hand he found cute. He felt the fear nearly overwhelm him, causing cold sweat to trickle down his back. He was about to turn and go back to his room, but no matter how hard he tried he couldn't take his eyes off from the sight before him. He steeled himself against the fear, and before he knew it he was walking towards his worst fear and the embodiment of all his dreams. She didn't notice until he was standing right next to her. When she looked over her eyes went wide and she dropped her Twinkie, Kya. Neji stumbled backwards putting up his arm as he expected her to try and slap him. But no slap came. Instead when he opened his eyes he saw a confused and stunned Tenten in front of him. Neji-kun. Sorry. Neji lowered his arm and stood up straight. It's okay, I didn't expect you to scream when you saw me. Tenten shook her head. She had just been thinking about him, and when she noticed some movement next to her there he was, as if he had appeared there by magic. What are you doing here? I didn't know you walked at night too. Neji shook his head. I usually don't. Tenten frowned. She realized that Neji hadn't taken his eyes off of her the entire time. She felt her heart skip a beat. No, she wouldn't allow herself to imagine something so childish. Then, why are you here, Neji-kun? Neji shrugged. There was something I needed to talk to you about. Now there was no escaping from it. Tenten felt her heart skip again. No. She wasn't going to do this. She wasn't a child anymore. Neji was just a friend. He would always be just a friend. What did you want to talk about? Neji breathed in very deeply and opened his mouth. Nothing else would come out. Panic began to overtake him. The fear was too strong. He couldn't bring himself to say 3 simple words. What the hell was wrong with him? Neji looked at the ground and shook while he clenched his fists. he couldn't believe it. He couldn't bring himself to say 3 simple words to his own teammate. Tenten frowned in worry. Neji-kun. What's wrong? She slowly reached out towards him but stopped halfway. She had never made physical contact with Neji except during training or on accident. Neji's silence made up her mind for her though. She touched his arm gently. Neji. Quote. Neji felt something miraculous happen. Goosebumps raced from the spot Tenten touched to cover his entire body, and he was filled with a cool warmth that chased the fear back into the pit that was welling up inside of him. And then it even chased the pit away. He looked up slowly. He had to tell her now, for he suddenly realized why he was so scared of this moment. This was important. This feeling, this love he felt for Tenten was more important to him than his life, or even the Hyuga clan. This feeling he felt for this girl was the most important thing in his life, and ultimately, therefore Tenten was the most important thing in his life. He had to let her know, even though she didn't feel the same. Neji looked intensely into Tenten's eyes. What I'm about to tell you, Tenten, is very important, at least to me. I understand you don't feel the same way about it, so I just want to let you know that I won't let it get in the way of our training or our friendship. Quote. Tenten couldn't help it now. Her heart had sped up to a pace that it felt like a bird was trying to get out of her chest. Could he? No, he couldn't. But what if? Tenten held her breath. She had faced dangers beyond count after becoming a Junin, and all of them were with Neji by her side. But this was far more. She felt anxiety, fear, anticipation, and a little bit dizzy. She held her breath and waited. Neji breathed in and let the breath out slowly. He couldn't turn back now that he had said all of that. Without thinking, he took Tenten's hand in both of his, holding it as if he would kiss it at any moment he wanted to. He could see Tenten freeze. He hoped she didn't hate him after this. Tenten, I love you. Quote. Tenten went numb. The world around her ceased to exist. The only thing real to her was Neji's hands holding hers and his voice ringing in her ears. I love you. Neji frowned, worried. Tenten. Tenten, can you hear me? I'm sorry. I didn't mean it to end up this way. I promise I won't let this get in the way of our oomph. Neji suddenly found himself pulled towards Tenten, her arms around his neck, one hand pressed against the back of his head. It took him a moment to realize that her lips were pressed against his. He didn't think, he couldn't think, he felt himself kiss her back, he felt himself deepen the kiss, he didn't know why, but he pressed his tongue against her lips and soon felt her tongue as well. Tenten felt drunk. She couldn't tell how much time was going by. Her entire focus was on the feel of Neji's lips and tongue, the touch of his hands as they rubbed her back. Part of her subconscious wondered at how insane she was to jump in and kiss him, the other part thought about the fact that she was being kissed back. She could feel her breathing deepen, she could feel her entire length pressed against him, she became aware of the rise and fall of his chest as he breathed against her, of the deep echo in her head that was his heart. She felt hot and alive, like she had electricity dancing across her skin wherever he touched her. Neji couldn't tell what was going on, besides the fact that she was pressed against him and he was kissing her with a paeon that he never knew he had. Now he understood how Naruto felt about Hinata. He could feel his emotions surge wildly like an uncontrollable wave, he could feel control slowly slipping away from him. After what seemed forever, Neji slowly drew away from Tenten, feeling his lips slightly stick to hers. Her eyes were half closed, and she was breathing deeply. He felt drunk, like his knees would give at any moment. It took them both a moment before they were clear enough to see that Tenten had somehow removed Neji's robe, leaving him bare-chested, and Neji unknowingly had pulled Tenten's shirt over hers. Luckily she was wearing a sports bra. Tenten was still breathing heavily when she realized their state. I'm sorry, Neji, I didn't mean to. This time she found herself being kissed by Neji. After a long moment they pulled away from each other, and this time found themselves on the ground, Neji on top and Tenten's shirt fully removed. Neji pushed himself up so that he was supporting himself with his arms and looking down at Tenten. Sorry, I just Tenten pulled Neji down to her, but instead of kissing him, she hugged him. Neji held her back, feeling her warmth against him, making the warm night air feel cold. Neji, do you really love me? Quote. Neji couldn't help but feel himself overwhelmed by the amount of emotion in that simple question. He held her tighter to him. Yes. Yes, I do, with all my heart, Tenten. More than anything in my life, I love you. And if you don't feel the same way, what are you talking about? Neji heard her voice, but it held no anger. Of course I feel the same way. I love you, Neji. I've been loving you so much and so long that I thought I would eventually die if I never got around to telling you. I want to be with you for the rest of my life. I trust no one more than you. I knew these things when we went on our very first mission. Neji couldn't help but chuckle. You mean when we helped that old woman cross a busy street? He laughed, but he couldn't help but feel his newfound emotion overflow and fill him to the brim. This is what he had been wanting all his life. Tenten laughed too. Yes. Ever since that day, when I saw how serious you were, how confident you were, I just fell for you. I always knew you never really believed in that fate stuff, and because you were in the Branch family I thought I had a chance. A small one, but still, a chance. Neji smiled and looked into those deep brown eyes, eyes that, when struck by moonlight, glowed a vivid deep green. She was the most beautiful creature he had ever seen. He wanted nothing else in the world. He bent down and kissed her lightly, a mere brushing of lips. Tenten, I want to spend my life with you too. Tenten smiled, and could feel tears begin to run down her cheeks. She had never felt so happy in her life. She was happy to have him as a teammate. She was joyous when he finally called himself her friend, and she was thankful that she was able to spend every day with him. But this was more than she could chew. She just let herself break down. Neji bent down and slowly kissed the tears from her cheeks. Tenten tightened her grip on him, as if she were afraid he would disappear. Neji felt something come over him. He didn't have to really think about it, because deep down inside of him he knew it was right, that it was meant to be. Neji breathed softly into Tenten's ear. Marry me. Quote. Tenten slowly pulled away from Neji so she could look him in the eyes. She was stunned to say the least. You mean it? Tenten couldn't believe what she just heard. It wasn't as if she didn't want this though, but we just found out that we're in love with each other. Don't you think you should wait to see that it will work out before asking that? Neji smiled. If we're really in love then there shouldn't be a question of when the right time is, should there? Neji nodded his head. I understand if you think it's too soon, if you want to wait. No. Neji looked at her in surprise, causing her to blush. No, it's just, are you sure? Neji looked intensely into her eyes. Are you sure? Neji slowly kissed her. Why wait, Tenten? I already know I want to spend my life with you. I realize that now. Quote. Tenten looked into his eyes, searchingly, reading his emotions. He really is serious. Tenten could feel herself being overwhelmed. There was only one answer to this question. Tenten held his face in both of her hands. Yes. Neji smiled, relieved. Really? Tenten nodded. Yes. 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 She held him to her as they began to laugh. She was wrong. This was the happiest she had ever felt in her life. And of course, Neji had never felt such happiness. He had found the person he had always loved for L in love with her the exact same day. He just hadn't realized it, and now they would be together, forever. They somehow found their way back to the central tree, but as Tenten was about to say goodnight to Neji and head to her room, but instead she found herself being carried up the ramp. T wound its way around the tree, up to Neji's room. She soon found herself curled against Neji's chest, listening to the peaceful rhythm of his heart. Neji's voice sounded softly in the dark, "Good night, my love." Quote. Tenten smiled warmly in the dark, "Good night, my love." It looked like Sakura-chan was going to lose her roommate. She'd understand.